Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we've seen The Beekeeper in the IMAX screen at Cineworld on Broad Street. It's written by Kurt Wimmer, directed by David Ayer, and it stars Jason Statham. People on Twitter have been saying, like, this is a movie that you would see as like a fake movie in another movie. You know, like a parody. Jason Statham is The Beekeeper. But, and yeah, I went in with extremely low expectations. I ended up having an extremely good time. That doesn't make it a good film. How about you?
I didn't have a good time.
No?
No. I wasn't bored, but I thought it was like a Trumpian film. It was kind of crude and nasty, really. I was surprised to see that this David Ayers had directed films that I really like. You know, like Fury, because I thought it was kind of incompetent, really.
He has a reasonable track record, although I don't know. I mean, I think the only one that I've seen that he's directed has been Suicide Squad, which I don't like.
Well, I like Suicide Squad, and I really do love Fury. Yeah, the Brad Pitt film. So I, I was surprised. I mean, I didn't recognize the name of the director when I saw it, and I just thought he was probably like some schlock first-time director who was a friend of Statham's. That's what I thought, right? I mean, that was the level of the filming. So
he's a director with a reasonable track record. Probably of the film, he wrote Training Day.
Yes.
Which is obviously a terrific
I love,
film.
yeah.
And probably the film he's directed, for which he's best regarded, would be End of Watch. I think that's probably the film of his that's got the best reputation.
I like End of Watch very much. I like Fury very much. I like Suicide Squad. So I don't know what happened on this one, but it's abysmal. I think it's abysmal.
It's one of the stupider films I've ever seen. It really reminded me of like 2009, sort of that era of filmmaking. In fact, it reminded me of movie posters from like 2009, because that was an era where everything was orange and teal. It was like every film poster had orange and teal, and everything was graded in that way. And then the movies were as well. You think about like Transformers movies from that era, that kind of thing. Faces were very orange. The sky was incredibly blue, and it was kind of the color grade was always extreme. And this had that. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time because it became a bit of a trope. You know, people started to criticize it. And this had that. You know, I was thinking this is one of the more aggressive colour grades I've seen recently. Jason Statham's face is so orange, and I kind of felt like it's half deliberate, because I think it's doing a thing with like honey baking the image, but like it was too much. The Foley was incredibly aggressive, and in the IMAX, you know, the sound is so high. But I started to like this after a little while. You know, I thought when it comes to action, Jason Statham just kicking the shit out of people. It's very close up. It's, you know, a little bit incoherent. It's not doing the most it can with, you know, it's not the best directed action you'll ever see.
It's not elegant and it's not thrilling.
No,
really.
It's very Hollywood action, but it's also incredibly crunchy, huge, loud sounds, you know, big punches, big gunshots. I really enjoyed that.
I didn't like it at all. I thought it was kind of crude and cheated. I mean, you know, the best action films, I mean, it's a thrill to watch the moves, really, and, you know, it has a logic, and, you know, you're kind of thrilled at bodies doing these things. You know, I'm thinking, like, even the John Wick films, I love the action sequences.
I wouldn't say even the John Wick films, especially the John Wick. They're the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jason Statham because actually I like the action sequences in a lot of his films. Yeah, I think the Transporter films are great at one level. What's the Crack films? You know, it's called something like Crack.
Oh, Crank. I love them.
I love them. You know, and that's a kind of another extreme. You know, and he is someone who's kind of so extraordinary because he features in all these different action franchises, right? And I love him in the early Guy Ritchie films. But it's very interesting that I think in this film, I mean, I still love his attitudes, right? And, you know, kind of his demeanor and the way that he speaks, really. But it's very telling. It's the first film of his that I can remember where he hasn't shown his body at all, right?
No, that's a good point.
There's
He's
not
always
a bicep
covered up.
to be seen.
That's true.
Yeah.
It did make me think, actually. It's funny you should mention that, because the style so much of the film and so much of the action reminded me of the last Rambo that we saw, where Stallone was really, really, really old by this point, but because he was so old, they were having to limit the action that he was doing. He could no longer move the way he once did, and so it's all about ambushing and quick things and things you can do in a very short shot and that sort of thing, which was quite effective. I mean, we had severe problems with that, but that kind of worked. And here, it has some similar connotation, although Jason Statham is not that old and he can still move much more fluidly than Stallone could.
That young,
but he's not showing off in the way that he once would.
I mean, part of the pleasure of watching a Jason Statham film is to watch Jason Statham, right? And until now, that has included his body on its own, actually, but also his body in action, and in motion, kind of doing actions. And you see very little of that here, actually. Yeah, so his character does all these incredible actions, but they're a blur, really, kind of.
Yes.
So I think one of the major pleasures for me of watching a Jason Statham film was really not there in this film. And the other elements, my God, how abysmal the whole thing was.
Okay, so let's talk about the plot, just so we can tell the audience, because I'm sure many people are not that interested in seeing this film. They'll just go, yeah, it's just some Jason Statham film, a beekeeper, what the fuck's that about? And, that's kind of the right attitude to go into the film with, to be honest. You start off with Jason Statham is a beekeeper. He's looking after bees. He's removing hornets from this old lady's barn. The old lady's played by
Felicia Rashad.
Felicia Rashad, yeah.
Who was Mrs. Cosby in The Cosby Show.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And she was Creed's mum in the new Creed, the young Creed, or rather adoptive mum, I think.
And just about, the nicest star persona you could screw over for money.
Yeah, so the film begins with her being scammed. It's a phishing scam, and these things are real, although if it were more realistic, it would, the call centre that was taking all her money would be in India. That's where this all kind of comes from in real life. But this is a kind of a very expensive looking call centre in the US. I mean, it's played like that scene in Wolf of Wall Street.
It is.
Where he's teaching them how to steal money from the people buying penny stocks. It's played like that, and so this guy gains this lady's confidence, steals all her money, including, it's pointed out rather inelegantly, as so much of the film is, a $2 million charity fund that she looks after. And she was looking after this for charity. It's like, it's not bad enough.
For children.
Yeah, not bad enough that she's just, a little old lady who doesn't know how to use computers, but she was looking after a charity.
No.
Because of this, she commits suicide. She's lost everything. She realises what's happened far too late. She commits suicide. Her daughter is an FBI agent, and simply by chance, and she comes across Jason Statham in the building with a knife, because he thinks there's an intruder there or something. So, she immediately is suspicious of him. Turns out that he didn't do it. But what later transpires is that he is not just a beekeeper, but a beekeeper with a capital B, which is a very secret, clandestine government organisation that goes above even the president, above everybody else, because they're about looking after the hive. When something goes wrong in America, these are the people who are empowered to do anything they want, act on their own terms. They don't report to anybody. They're given everything they want. So you just have this group of people, individuals, who are these caretakers for the entire country. And he's, although he's retired, he's going off to save the day. I mean, he has this incredibly inelegant thing where he talks almost to the camera, like he's looking not quite down the barrel, just past it, but it's talking to the audience almost, where he talks about, you shouldn't steal from little old ladies, it's wrong. And it's so ridiculous.
Yes.
That's where I started to get into the sense of like, wow, this one really isn't that good.
I think it's the worst thing we've seen, and actually I thought it was so ironic. Here's the worst film that we've seen, and we've seen it like, in IMAX with great projection and great luminosity and all the things that we've, decried of not being able to see in much, much, much better films of the same cinema. So
basically it becomes like a rampage, and he goes off to, he follows the money, he goes up the chain, he ends up with the FBI kind of chasing him, although they have met, they immediately split up, and then the FBI realises, oh God, this guy's incredibly dangerous. And they start uncovering what this Beekeeper program is all about. So it's Jason Statham on a moral rampage to kill the right people. And like I say, I got into this, because I thought I was in the right mood for this. It's incredibly dumb. I think it understands how silly it is at points. I mean, when you have that replacement beekeeper show up to try and take him out, and she's dressed like the 80s and has a minigun, and then she gets knocked out by a jar of honey, it's daft.
It is, but there's a kind of a daftness or an exaggeratedness, which is really also very intelligent, like in the Crank films, I think. Or, it's doing something else. Or there is, I think, a kind of a condescension to its audience. I do think that this film is treating its audience as if it's dumb, right? I think, all the politics, all the motivation, the basis of the scam, the morality of it, the black and whiteness of it, is just, it basically thinks that you're an idiot and it's going to make something, that only an idiot can like.
Yeah, I mean, it has very low expectations of its audience, particularly when it comes to, and this will be spoiler stuff. The main villain in this is Josh Hutcherson, who it turns out
is fantastic. I think
I love him.
Yeah,
and it turns out, because you don't know this at the start, that he is not just the leader of this sort of this fraudulent criminal enterprise. But he's the president's son. The president's played by Gemma Redgrave. And, I don't have any problem with getting to argue. It's great. I like the idea of it going all the way to the very top, and he's going to have to take it out. But what I think is then low expectation having, as it were, of the audience, is that it's just this guy who is the bad guy, and the president had all the best intentions. I just want to make things better. And you're thinking, like, why not just have this? I mean, in the age, I think every generation, I suppose, has its version of the realization that the president or the office of the president can be corrupt. So the big one was Nixon, but since then, everyone, you can look at Clinton, Bush, and of course Trump, and everyone has had their realization that, oh God, this is as bad as it can get, and this is as corrupt as it can get. And why is it that in this film we are really expected to think that this president had all the best intentions and got there on the best intentions, although with the unknowing criminal help of her son, whose frauds pay for all this?
It's so stupid.
It's really daft. If she was knowing and that was part of it, I would buy that so much more.
I also kind of didn't like the way. So, the film is meant to be glamorous. It's bringing up all these old stars, for the audience's pleasure, and it's meant to be slick. And I think it does none of those things. Of all the stars that it brings up, Minnie Driver, Jeremy Irons, kind of the only one that I took any pleasure in their performance was really Hutcherson.
Josh Hutcherson.
Hutcherson.
I mean, can we define then what we mean by old star? Because he's younger than me.
Well,
has been a star for a while.
Well, he was a star in the Hunger Games, and kind of he's brought in a supporting role, to bring something to the film. Yeah, and I mean, he's a young actor, but I group him with Minnie Driver, who was briefly a star in the 90s, and Jeremy Irons, who had a longer career and was Oscar nominated and so on. And indeed Felicia Rashad, who is a big name. You associate, people who you associate things with is what I mean, right? So, and he's the only one that kind of surprises and delights. It's kind of like a wicked, kind of charming, effervescent performance. Minnie Driver is like, she's okay, but really she's dead wood. And Jeremy Irons is kind of, I mean, he doesn't do anything bad, but he doesn't really bring much to the role, which I think he is expected to, because, it's not much of a role, but it's the best one of, kind of these, right? I mean, he is someone who's head of the CIA, who's now betraying it because he loves this woman. I mean, he's actually given something to play, and he's meant to be wise and cowardly, and
And he should play off Josh Hutcherson better than he does.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't get a single laugh, really.
No.
So, I think none of the actors are used very well or wisely, but, Hutcherson at least brings something to it. Yeah, he kind of pops in a way that the others don't. So, for me, it's really like a complete dud of a film, really.
Yeah, I mean, I can't defend it on any basis other than I had a really good time. I think
that's important.
I was in the right mood for it, like I say, and I could have gone in with the very lowest expectations and sort of and had a very bad time and gone, this is real trash, isn't it? It's real tripe. But something about it did start to click for me, and I think it is that certain daftness. And when you come to the things that, as you were saying, where the film is expecting so little of its audience that it's insulting.
I thought that's why it put me in a bad mood, actually.
Yeah. Well, I kind of had I had the instinct to laugh at that stuff and go, wow, this is so stupid, and enjoy that on its kind of lack of merit, if you like. But I can also understand that you would just watch this and go, no, this is just terrible, and I hate the fact that it thinks so little of me. So part of that is how you personally take it on the day, I
guess. I mean, kind of, just because one likes something doesn't make it good.
No, absolutely.
But I did think that, in the transported films, there was something so sleek and elegant and smart about, the concept, and then kind of, the look and move of the films, and then I also thought, in a larger sense, that, one of the reasons why I'm, because I'm very fascinated by Statham, really, kind of the films with Guy Ritchie, the development of his star persona, the fact that, he really represents this East London working class guy, then kind of slightly scammy or, but kind of very likable, who then becomes the major action star in the world, right? Like, I think the Expendables. It's so interesting because in those films, he's really set up as the logical inheritor to the mantle of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, right? So there's like Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and Van Damme and whatever. And then you have like Statham as the new. So to represent that and to have achieved that, and then, to give us this, I thought...
Yeah, but I mean, the thing you also got to remember is those actors, those stars you mentioned, had strings of films like this that were equally... I mean, especially Stallone, which we've talked about before.
Yeah.
How he basically his whole career has relied on Rambo and Rocky, and even then, only a few of those are good.
Well, that's true. I don't think that's the case with Schwarzenegger, actually.
Schwarzenegger was better.
I mean, even the B films are really good B films, the Predators and, so on. So, and, Statham has a lot of bad films. And I didn't expect anything good. Like, I would have been quite happy to have felt the way that you felt. Yeah, that it wasn't great, but, kind of, if Statham was in good form, then I would have been quite happy, really. But this was, like, excessively dumb. Right? Like, and not that it relished dumbness in an intelligent way, the way that some of his other films do. This was really patronizing and condescending, and I really disliked it,
Yeah, no, I do think it's going a little too far to describe it as patronizing and condescending, but I think it is right, because I think it is genuinely expecting its audience to buy into some of the dumber things that we've talked about.
And it's feeding into them.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the ideas in the film are very Trumpian. You could see, how a MAGA audience would love this, Except for the race aspect.
You mean in terms of the kind
There's
of...
right and wrong, and on the other hand, you're boiling people alive, right? Or setting them on fire.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially the film is kind of showing you a government-sponsored, legitimised vigilante justice.
Yes.
That's what it is, So, like, it's vigilante justice, but explicitly within the law in the confines of this film, which is kind of weird. And I agree, it kind of... It is kind of marrying those two things of, like... Yeah, I mean, the MAGA crowd hates the government. Hates big government. The government should get out of this, that, and the other. But here it's like, no, the government is doing the right thing because the government has explicitly provided for vigilantes.
Wow. I do think it fits into a Trumpian thing very easily because, isn't it terrible? You're stealing from poor widows, right? Set them on fire, kill 25 of them, burn the building down, right? But the president is innocent.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
actually, the Josh Hutcherson character, I immediately was starting to think of, I immediately thought of Hunter Biden, because the whole thing about that is like Joe Biden is nice and whatever, innocent, all this, but his son is the problem. His son is the evildoer who the MAGA crowd are constantly going after, and he kind of made me think of that. But like, I kind of thought, I mean, I don't know the truth of anything happening in the various Hunter Biden cases, but it is very stupid to try and have us believe, like I say, a story in which the son is up to all this and the president is as open-hearted and innocent as she's shown to be here. Very stupid, and it is kind of insulting that we're expected to believe that. But the thing is, I also, because you can so obviously see these cogs turning in how it's setting up these characters and having placing one as a villain and one as not, and all this. That's where I found enjoyment in that, seeing the cogs turning so obviously. You see the machinery at work here.
I didn't find any enjoyment in that, and also I kind of felt really cheated because, in some of the great suspense or action films, you want to get the feeling that getting from A to B is impossible. Yeah, and then you watch them do it, right? Like you find the logic in the actions that get them from A to B, right? And kind of that's what you're shown. And in this, you think, oh my God, this is impossible, and then it's just made possible, but without any logic or without you thinking of how it could possibly be, possible. The only exception to that is, when he goes with the skateboard under the cars, right? And you say, oh, that's how he's doing it. Yeah, he's got a skateboard.
Yeah, although, of course, that's also quickly done because you get this thing of that they're checking under all the cars and how is he going to get into this party where the president is so he can get to...
There's no suspense.
Well, no, the element of cheating there is, he's hiding under the lorry. The guy comes in on the board to check under the lorry. He takes him, knocks him out or kills him, whichever he does, and takes his place.
Yeah.
But the element of you get that that's what he's doing, and it's kind of nice and smart and cool. But the moment of him taking his place and exactly how he does that is it's skipped over, right? Like details like that are skipped over. I don't mind it, but it is there. Like also, there are at least 2 occasions early on, maybe 3, in which they're trying to track people down. So we're trying to track down the beekeeper guy because no one knows who he is. We're trying to track down the company that's doing all this because they route all their calls, and how are we going to track them down? And what happens is you have characters say, we have no idea how to do this. Let me give someone a call, and then you cut, and the next scene is they found it. I don't mind that. Like, it's just I don't need to go through all the detail of we did this, we did that. Just come back. You found them. Let's get on with it. I didn't mind it.
Well, I didn't mind that, and that's not really what I was talking about. I mean, I was talking more about the logic of an action. That kind of, that you want to see how someone with great skill and great physical prowess will get from A to B, that it seems impossible, but then they show you how they do it. That it has a logic. Whereas this is just cut, pow, 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 pow. And then boom.
With lots of sound effects. I love it. I was in the mood for it. It worked for me, It had the little pow with a boom and a boom. It was great. I was into it, man. Yeah. Like I say, it's far from the best action you'll ever see, but it was functional to a degree, and it served a purpose. And I liked it's the most easily criticisable action in the way it's directed, because it is all about the sound effects. Really is all about the sound effects, and it's all about the rapidity of the editing and the close-ups and we always talk about kind of clarity of action and that sort of thing, and there is none of that here. But there was an intensity to it that I really enjoyed. Okay, well, I didn't. Yeah, I think if it was showing on TV, I would have switched off. Really. Oh God, yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I thought that myself. Yeah, absolutely. It's there's nothing compelling about this. I thought it was kind of dumb, and this is really minor, but when the FBI agent, what's her name? Emmy Raver Lampman. She plays the FBI agent whose mother is killed, and she's talking to Statham at the start, and she says, "I detect a bit of British in your accent," and I'm going like, "Why are we pointing this out at this point?" Like, it kind of thought, do you remember when we saw Predator? We watched it on the podcast. at the start of that, there's a thing about explaining why Arnold Schwarzenegger has the accent he does, basically.
Yeah.
He talks about coming from Australia.
But after a while, you don't need to because he's Schwarzenegger.
Right, like, why is it at this point we still need to have someone say, Jason Statham, are you British?
I know.
Like, he's just Jason Statham. And also, because in this, I mean, I can't tell if he's even putting on a half American accent. I think
I can't
felt
tell.
like it felt like it at points, but maybe not. Maybe he's also just been in LA for so long he's picked up a bit of the lilt. But you've also got Jeremy Irons, who is as English as you like in his accent, and he's supposed to have been head of the CIA. No one has a question about that.
know.
Like, why? We don't need to question.
Or Mini Driver. Actually, I had this whole thing in the car talking. I forget what word I was thinking about. A kind of where. Anyway, I was going to say that there's a kind of a lack of generosity because. When you have like American films, they often include tons and tons of British actors, right? Yeah. And then when you have like British films, they almost never include, American actors. And now I'm not sure whether this is an American film or a British film, but it's kind of interesting that in a Jason Statham film, it's like 90% of the cast is British. Yeah. And they're all playing CIA agents, right? Or presidents, right?
Yeah,
I mean...
I can tell you that the film is definitely considered an American film. I mean, even though everyone in it is British, and even though you can tell where parts of it, if not all of it, has been shot in the UK, as I was saying, they're supposed to be in Boston, and they show you 2 photos on screen, and I'm going, that is a street in London. I can't tell you which one, but I recognise the double yellow lines, I see the road signs, this is British, and then when you get there, I'm pretty sure you can see a Tesco in the back.
Well, maybe they wanted to normalise Statham's accent by surrounding him with Mini Drivers and Jeremy Irons and Scottish villains,
Well, there's no Scottish.
Yeah, the guy with the blonde hair and the...
He's South African, I think.
Oh, he's South African.
He's supposed to be. I mean, I don't know if he is South African or if he's just putting on an incredibly over-the-top accent.
Okay.
But it's certainly supposed to be a South African thug.
Okay, I thought it sounded Scottish, but my ear's not very good.
But anyway, the point is that even though like the film is covered in things, British things that you will recognise, it's British in the same way that Star Wars is British. It's filmed here. It's got British people in it. It's got British people working on it. It's an American film.
I know, but Star Wars had Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and what's the other one?
Mark Hamill.
So it's Alec Guinness, and Alec Guinness's casting is understandable because he's meant to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, but this is Jason Statham and Jeremy Irons and Mini Driver, and really kind of the only other person is Hutchison. So it just kind of is. It doesn't feel the same way to me. It just seems dissonant. All right, we don't recommend that you watch this film.
No, I absolutely recommend it. It's fucking wicked. I loved it. I had a really good time. It's really daft. You could if you've got a brain in your nut, then you'll look at all the really stupid things and be entertained by them too, because you go, wow, this is stupid. It's really expecting me to buy blah blah blah. So fun movie, man. See it at the IMAX.
Ugh. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I know.
But here we go.
You've got no taste. That's the problem.
We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.